support. All right, so we've got some viewers here, and I think we can go ahead and dive in. First, I want to quickly intro Jenny. So Jenny Finkel is here. She's got Jenny Finkel Yoga as her yoga teaching business. And Jenny and I connected recently on Nama Stream. So we did a live webinar where I did a little brand audit or audit review of her brand and her website, gave her some feedback live, and she was a super big trooper and let me kind of pick things apart and help her to find some ways to improve the flow of her website and her brand. So that was awesome, and it was so fun. Yeah. And Jenny's here now. She's graciously come on to our live chat to help us kind of understand more of her experiences with rebranding and how it's helped her business, when you should think about it, how you should consider it, that kind of thing. So we're going to go through kind of Q&A session, but it's going to be super casual, and we're just going to have a conversation. So I want you guys to ask questions in the Q&A. Let us know as you go. I'm going to be monitoring that while Jenny's talking. So if I see something that's really relevant to the conversation, I will definitely tackle it and kind of cut in. Otherwise, we're going to save some for the end if you have questions. So let's just dive in, Jenny. So how about we start by you just telling us a little bit about who you are and what you're doing with yoga right now, and we'll just do a little bit of an intro.
Awesome. My name is Jenny Finkel, and Jenny Finkel Yoga is my business, as you mentioned. I'm in Chicago. I'm based in Chicago. I teach yoga and fitness full time. I teach about 80% yoga, and the other 20% of my classes and sessions are bar or group fitness. I was also just recently made a Fitbit local ambassador for the city of Chicago, and we have our big launch event this Saturday, the 16th. So if you're in Chicago, you should come to Grant Park, and that's been a big, taken up a lot of space in a lot of energetic space as we've been getting ready for that. So it's super exciting. So yeah, that's what I'm doing right now.
Awesome. And so anybody who's just joining, I've in the showcase tab up at the top, you can find a drop down where the Q&A in the showcase is. I've dropped Jenny's blog in there where she talks all about kind of her experience with rebranding and our experience kind of going through her brand and things like that. So you can check that out after. But Jenny, so you had to move states, correct? That's when you kind of had to shift a little bit of your focus and start to consider what this yoga branding thing even was for you. Is that right?
Yeah, I would say, so to kind of take you along the path a little bit of how this developed for me, when I finished my 200-hour and started working, I was living in New Orleans, and I had already been working in the retail area of a yoga studio, really great yoga studio there called Life on Magazine Street. So I was already part of the community, and then I became a yoga teacher. So when I started teaching yoga, I already I worked at a studio, so I started teaching there right away. I knew the students, I knew the clients. I was pretty active in the yoga community. So when I began my teaching career, I was really, really lucky to be able to kind of jump right in. And I was there for about a year when my husband, then boyfriend, now husband, got a job in Chicago. So that was about 5 years ago. We relocated here to Chicago. And Chicago, as you probably know, is a much, much bigger city, a huge market for yoga. And I think when we moved here, I knew that it was going to be a little bit hard to break into the yoga community because nobody knew me here. I didn't have any connections. I don't think it's hard to think back as I was preparing for a chat today, I was trying to remember how naive was I? Did I really just think I was going to move to Chicago and everybody was just going to hire me to teach? Maybe I did. I don't think I was quite that confident, but I definitely was a little surprised at how hard it was to gain entry into the yoga community here. It's now I'm such an active part of the yoga community that it's hard to remember that, but I could not get a job. I couldn't get a job. Most of the studios here have their own in-house trainings, and so they tend to kind of hire their own teachers. It was just tough. So that first year I wasn't working as much as I wanted to. I had a few little gigs here and there. I picked up a private and I had a couple little things, but I wasn't working a lot. And so that's when I built my first website, which was Chicago Yoga.
Which I love, by the way. I know in your blog, you're like laughing at yourself, saying you had to explain it to everybody that I got it.
Thank you, Danielle. Everybody was like Chicago, like nobody got it. So I thought it was so clever, right? I was like, oh, Chicago yoga.
Awesome.
And I built that myself, which was a big challenge for me. I used iWeb, which is the now defunct Apple site builder. And I was very proud of that because I'm a super dumb about that kind of stuff. Like I'm not somebody who like sits around and like builds websites or, writes code all day.
The purpose of that website, what was your intention kind of behind that? Did you have a plan when you moved to start that and that was kind of the goal?
So that's a really good question. And I would say, I think my intention really at that time was that I wasn't really working and I wanted a project that made me feel productive. I wanted something that made me feel like, even though I wasn't out teaching yoga, I was sort of moving my business forward in a way. I was creating a little bit more of a presence online. I was trying to be searchable and findable and Googleable. So I really don't think at that time I was thinking in terms of like building a brand. I think it was almost like, I hesitate to use the phrase law of attraction. I'm not super into that, but it was a little bit of a law of attraction thing. Like if you build it, they will come. Like, let's just get it out there. How many different ways can I kind of put myself out there in the world for people to find? So I wasn't really thinking in terms of branding. And it's interesting in two ways. It's two things that I sort of notice now in hindsight. One was that Chicago Yoga was my handle, and I use that for all my social media and everything, which I thought was really clever and cute, right? And in a way, I sort of thought it was good. It was a good thing to have this name that seemed like it was a little bit more than just me. It wasn't just Jenny Finkel Yoga. It was maybe something like, maybe I had a whole bunch of like underlings that were, behind me. So I think not having my name front and forward was, I don't know, that was an interesting choice. That was, that was maybe a questionable choice.
When we were doing Chicago, was that sort of the platform where you were offering just your yoga services, teaching, private, anything that kind of that? Okay.
Yep. Class schedule, prices for privates. I don't know. I was like, I really jammed that website full of stuff. I had links to other things. Like I just was like, it was jam packed full of stuff, which I now know, as I'm sure you tell a lot of your clients, that you want to streamline your website because if you overwhelm people, they'll just kind of,
they'll get overwhelmed.
Yeah, they get overwhelmed. But I was like, put a bunch of stuff in there and let's just see what happens.
Yes.
The other thing that's interesting about that and again, I think some of this I kind of knew at the time, but I wasn't really clear. I wasn't really clear that I wasn't thinking about it in terms of a brand, but my template, it was an iWeb template. My template was like black and gray. So it had this very modern, clean, industrial, dark kind of vibe. Which, if you know me, like if you look at
color everywhere,
it's not me. It's not.
That's interesting.
It was interesting, and part of it was that I was looking through the
themes
on iWeb, and they just like it was hard to find. So there was like a comic book theme, and there's like a travel journal kind of theme. Like, there's.
And if you're not thinking like in terms of brand, like you said, you weren't thinking in terms of brand or the direction. So that's totally reasonable. Yeah. Exactly.
So I was kind of picking what I thought was the most simple. The kind of the cleanest theme. I like that word better. I went with that, and it really was pretty antithetical to who I am. So I think those were the two first things. Not thinking about brand, was not having my name face forward, and this like sort of all black, gray, industrial, super modern kind of look.
And then, so you had Chicago, you developed the website, you took time to put, resources into that, and you built it up. Did that take you anywhere? When did you kind of decide to make the shift into Jenny Finkel Yoga and sort of you shifted from that Chicago to maybe a directionalist brand to focusing a little bit more on getting that area focused?
That took about 4 years.
The process for everybody, yeah.
It was really long. And I think, and I may have mentioned this, I think I mentioned this in my blog post, that initially when I came up with Chicago Yoga, I thought maybe one day I'll want to own a studio. If we were living in Chicago for long enough that I decide I want to open a brick and mortar studio, then I would call it Chicago Yoga. So I kind of want to claim that, the address and all of that stuff now, and my social media accounts. And then I quickly realized that I did not ever want to own a brick and mortar studio. But now I was kind of stuck with it, and I had built up my social media. And so I thought about it, I don't know, probably after about 2 years, I thought I really need to switch this. I really need to make myself the brand and not this fictional, like fake studio that I'm never going to own. But I just didn't know, like it was hard for me to build that website, and I was building up my social media accounts, trying to get Instagram followers and Facebook and all that stuff. And it was really kind of like overwhelming for me to think about like starting all
Changing
over.
It. Yeah.
And then it was this spring, actually, because I'm kind of an all or nothing person. So finally this spring, I was like,
Gotta do it.
Yeah, totally. So I just like, my friend said, you rebranded like a ninja. Sorry if I was my throat.
That's okay. Yeah, take it.
She said, you're like a ninja. Like I woke up one day and all of a sudden you were Jenny Finkel Yoga. And like you had a new website, new Facebook, new Instagram, like everything had changed. Opened a Twitter account, which we were just talking about, which is not very active, but it's there.
That's okay. It's there. And you have all of your handles the same, which I love.
Yes. I think that's important.
Yeah. And so take your time, Jenny.
Sorry, I don't know what's in there.
That's okay. When you shifted over to, so you made this decision, you were Chicago, you were really putting, 4 years worth of energy behind that.
Yeah.
When you decided to make the shift, obviously there's fear, like you said, in redoing everything. Were you able to kind of maneuver and transition over to Jenny Finkel Yoga, bring some of your audience over? Were you able to kind of make that transition without it being as drastic as you thought, or was it harder than you thought, or?
I would say yes and yes. So really, as it turns out, on Facebook and Instagram, you can just change your name. That's actually not that hard to do. You also have to change the URL. So especially on Facebook, I was facebook.com/Chicago Yoga.
Right.
When I changed my name to Jenny Finkel Yoga, I was still facebook.com/Chicago Yoga. So you have to actually change that.
Change the URL. Okay.
Yeah, but you can do that. That's the thing that you can do. So that's actually not that hard. I still don't have the 301 redirect from Chicago Yoga to Jenny Finkel Yoga.
Right.
And before I built the new website, I actually, like just even a couple of months before, I kind of rebuilt. I picked a new theme and I rebuilt all of Chicago Yoga. So Chicago Yoga is still
out there.
It's still out there. I do have like a big link that says, don't look at this website anymore. Go to my new one.
Right.
But it still, for whatever reason, it still has pretty high SEO. I think its SEO is still a little bit higher than Jenny Finkel Yoga. So I don't know. I just haven't really shut it down yet.
Yeah, and that's probably a good, keep it live like you've done. You've put your link on it. And for anyone who doesn't know what a 301 redirect is, that Jenny said, is that if you have something like this, or you're going to be rebranding and shifting it, you can set up through your hosting or through your website platform redirect, which lets you essentially redirect a visitor. When they type in Chicago Yoga, it'll automatically take them to Jenny Finkel Yoga. So it's makes it easier if you are shifting things, so that if people do land on your URL, they're getting brought to the right place. So there's ways to set that up, and there's definitely ways to make the transition. And of course comes with that fear and starting over and moving states, and how are you going to rebuild a business? And so Jenny, like, when did you have that aha moment, or when did you decide that, and let's use the word branding, it might be something different, but when did you decide that branding was important for your yoga business? And why, like, would you say that it's important and necessary for teachers, or how do you feel about that?
Yes. And I talk about this a little bit in my blog too, that, it seems like everybody, not just yoga teachers, but everybody's like a brand now. Every person is a brand. And so something about that, I think, cause I'm secretly like a really old, stodgy person. Something about it was like, what does this mean? Like, everybody's a brand. What does this even mean? But throughout, as I think most yoga teachers, we have ebbs and flows throughout our careers. I certainly have. I've been teaching now full time for 6 years, and I feel like I'm really super busy all the time. But there are definitely times when, like, your private clients move away, or things kind of slow down a little bit. And probably about a year ago, my private clientele kind of dropped off a little bit, and I found that I had more time in my schedule. And again, whenever I have that space kind of opens up for me, I try to think, well, how can I use this extra time productively? Mm-hmm. And I started watching a bunch of webinars about building your yoga business and branding, and it just kind of, I don't know, I found them very valuable. I really, really found them very valuable. And what I started to realize, and maybe some of you who are watching are on the big Yoga Teachers Facebook group. It's got like almost 15,000 members. It's a big group. And if you ever like kind of lurk around in there, it can get very contentious.
Yeah.
People are very opinionated. Yeah. Which I don't really think is a bad thing. But what it reminds me of when I see that and people get very defensive. Protective. Yeah. It reminds me that the concept of yoga is so vast. Like if you say you're a yoga teacher, that could mean anything. It could mean anything from like you're a hardcore sweaty power flow teacher who works at a gym to you like own an ashram and you do silent meditation retreats in India. I mean, and all of that is right. It's all fine. It's all good. You could be anywhere on that spectrum. But if you just say yoga, it's almost meaningless. And so I started to realize that, now I have this website, I have these social media accounts. I'm now a pretty involved member of the Chicago yoga community. And I started to realize like people, students, prospective students should have some kind of an idea of what they're going to get when they show up to your class.
Yeah, totally.
Like what are they going to be lying around on blankets doing a yoga nidra and having a guided meditation? Are they going to get really sweaty? They should just have some kind of an idea. And not only that in terms of styles of yoga, but teaching styles. There are a lot of great teachers who are tough love teachers who never crack a smile, who walk around with their hands behind their back and just pace the room back and forth and like kind of shout orders. And then there are the really like touchy-feely, deep adjustments, like massagey kind of yoga teachers. And then there's somebody like me who's like this, I just kind of chatter and tell jokes and try to make people laugh. And all of that's right. None of that is wrong. But certain students are going to align with certain teaching personalities. So you might take my class and be like, she's such a weirdo. Why does she say all this weird shit? And then you might go to another class and be like, I really like that this drill sergeant teacher never tells me I did a good job, or, so different teaching styles align with different people. And so I think it's just important for students to get some kind of sense of who you are and whether or not they're going to connect to you.
Yeah, I love that. It's so true. Like if you just saw on a schedule somewhere that there's a yoga class at noon, like, are you going to laugh in that class? Are you going to cry in that class? Are you going to sweat? Are you going to, you just have no idea. And I could take that risk as a student and go pay $10 to $25 for a class, and take that risk and go learn. And then I might walk out loving the teacher, like you said, or it might not resonate with me. And like you said too, it's never right or wrong. It's just about finding the audience that aligns to your teaching style. So I love how you've put that into perspective for us, to just why branding. And like I said, when I was kind of asking you the question, I said, we'll use the word branding because I made a conscious choice when I started this group and this kind of community of teachers to use that word, because I want to start getting rid of the stigma attached to what branding is, because some people will see branding for yoga teachers and cringe and say, we shouldn't be putting that term with branding, with yoga and with yoga teachers. But it doesn't have to be called branding. It can be called, the self journey of figuring out who you are as a teacher. It can be finding your students. Authenticity. Yeah. Like, call it what you want to call it. For me, in my work, what I do, it's a branding process. And I love how you've put it out for everybody to just say, like, this is what the process kind of means and why it was important for you and why you think it's important for teachers. Because I come across it every day where people are like, branding, like, do I need to do that? And it's not necessarily a need. It's just to make your job easier and more effective and more sustainable. So,
and it doesn't mean that you're like putting like bus stop, like real estate agent signs on bus stops, it just means that you're conveying your message, whether you're in front of a classroom or just like,
more effectively. You're communicating much more effectively because you've got this foundation and you know who you are, so you know how to communicate and you know how to reach the people that you want to be reaching. So it's much more effective to do it that way. And I totally agree. It doesn't mean that you're building some empire. You're not building the next Bikram yoga, branch. Like, that's not what it's about. It's about really individualizing your teaching experience and figuring out what path that's going to take you on. I would love to know how, since you've decided to make the shift from Chicago to Jenny Finkel Yoga, what have you seen change in your business? Have you seen any benefits from that yet? Have you been happy with the overhaul, or like what kind of has driven that to be the successful, the right choice for you?
I think weirdly, and it's, I'm 37 years old, so I feel like I should have aged out of the trying to be all things to all people kind of mentality, but I still very much, I've always been so hesitant to ruffle any feathers, right? Like, I just want everybody to like me.
Yeah, everybody. So many people are guilty of that.
Yeah, like I don't like to be controversial. So even though I feel like as a teacher, when I stand at the front of the classroom, I feel pretty confident in who I am and how I communicate to my students, I still felt the whole time I had my website and I would write blog entries. I had all these blog entries and I still sort of felt like, here's a happy little sunshiny blog entry. Here's some super bland vanilla blog entry about some random thing that's not going to offend anybody or make anybody mad, but maybe you'll read it and you'll think I'm a nice person.
Yeah.
So once I made the switch over, and I really can't totally explain it, but once I switched over, I was like, that's over. That's over. I'm going to be me. My blog entries are going to be me, which isn't that different. I'm still a nice person, but I felt like I'm going to communicate more directly in my own voice and say the things that I just really want to say. And so I don't even know, I wrote my rebranding blog, which was pretty honest. And I just wrote a blog about smoothies versus daiquiris, because I loved it. I loved it. I read that one too, and I loved it. Thank you. I wrote a blog post about thinking kale is stupid. I hate kale. So I just started to feel like I don't want to be all like green juice and that's not really who I am. So that was a big change for me. And I would say the other big change is that Chicago yoga is hard to tell people. It's hard for people to hear that. If you say, go to my website at chicagoyoga.com, they don't hear that right. If you write it out, it doesn't look right on. It's hard. That's a hard thing for people to convey. But if you say Jenny Finkel Yoga, as long as they spell Finkel right, Finkel, then they'll find me. I'm much easier to find this.
Yeah. Way. I love that. And I think that I've said this to this group before, and the Facebook group, we did a live chat on it about naming your yoga business. And do you use your name or do you use a company name and things like that? And I love for like what how you're teaching yoga, the way that you're approaching teaching yoga. It's so much more personal and people love personal connection. And like you said, now you can kind of use your voice in a more authentic way because it's coming from Jenny Finkel Yoga. So it's just so much more personal. And if you check out Jenny, she's all about like donuts and stuff too on her Instagram, which I love. It's just, it totally, when you visit, her social media or you read her blog, you get a sense of what her classes would be like. You can just get that authentic feeling from the brand that you've created. So I love that. And I think you've done such a good job at just using you as your brand and shifting from Chicago towards your own business that's named after kind of you. Like you said, it makes it so much easier. If someone comes across a class that you teach in a studio and they know nothing else other than her name was Jenny, she taught at that, they can find you a lot easier, I think, when it's things like that. And there's definitely a place and a time for having a business name, for sure. There's lots of room in the yoga teaching industry to have a business name depending on what offerings you have. But I love when teachers can kind of especially start out using a personal touch to their teaching and an approach. So that's awesome. And then one last question I wanted to ask before we start to wrap up, and this has been awesome so far, Jenny, is what advice do you have for kind of yoga teachers who either might be thinking, let's start with one, what advice, kind of quick and concise, would you have for people who are starting to think about, is branding something I need to consider? Do I need to worry about this? where do I start? Like, what advice would you give? Is it important or is it not?
Yes, I would say it is. Yes, yes, it's important. I think, and this sort of ties into a whole other conversation that, again, people get very contentious about when people don't like, lots of people don't, aren't comfortable with yoga and business together. Like a lot of people will tell you, you know, it's a calling, don't get into it for the money. You know, there's a big dichotomy there too, right?
Totally.
Like people who are like, teach for free because it's all coming from your heart, and other people saying, don't, you've worked hard for this. You did a lot of training, you've put a lot into this. You should financially realize that.
Yeah.
So I think the first thing you need to do is decide where you fall on that spectrum. Are you somebody who just wants to put more free yoga out in the world for people, or are you trying to actually make a living at this? And for me, it's the latter. This is my business. This is my livelihood. I teach full time. It's my job. It's how I pay my bills. So if that's you, if you're trying to pay your bills teaching yoga, then you absolutely need to create something, to create a foundation for yourself. So in that way, yes, I think it's super, super important.
Yeah, that's very important. And I love that because there absolutely is the two ends of the spectrum. And since working with yoga teachers, I totally see it so clearly now. And it's just, it's tricky. It's a tricky conversation. But like you said, if it's something that you're working towards and you've invested your time and a lot of money in training, then people are coming to you because you have a skill that they want to learn more about. So yeah, I think there should be no shame in trying to have that energy exchange, which is money in this case. Let that happen for you and build that up. So I love that. And then what would your advice be for yoga teachers who might be in a similar situation like you were a few years ago, where you had to move and totally kind of start fresh? Where do you suggest they kind of just start in that area?
I would say, well, specifically if you're in a new community, or even if you're just a new yoga teacher and you're trying to get jobs, I really think you have to go out there and take class everywhere. Go to all the studios you can go to, take class, get your face in front of people, meet the teachers, meet studio owners, take class so that they can see your practice. So I think that's step one. That's definitely what I did a lot of yoga when I first moved to Chicago. And then I think in terms of building your brand, I know that seems like, God, what does that even mean? Like, how do I do that? Just think about the things that you like. What do you like? I don't like green juice. I think green juice is like, eat a salad. If you want something green, eat a salad. Don't drink green juice. It's wasteful. But I love donuts.
She does.
I love donuts. So for me, like, if you were to see an Instagram post of me sipping on my green juice, that would be really weird. That's not me. I drink daiquiris and I eat donuts. And I eat salad. I do like spinach. I have this little dog. This little dog is my she's
so cute.
She's my little prop dog, right? So if I didn't have I have this little small weird dog, right? So if you saw me with, I don't know,
a big,
yeah, like it's just, what do you like? What do you do? You wear mala beads? Do you make your own mala beads? Do you like green juice? Like what kinds of things do you like? And that's what your Instagram feed and your Facebook, that's what you should be talking about.
Start exploring. It's really just start exploring yourself as a yoga individual, teacher, whatever you want to call it. Like, it's really just starting. And that's my advice too to teachers especially who are just starting, is just explore, figure out what you like, figure out what you don't like. Who do you like teaching? Who don't you like teaching? What classes do you just dread going to teach? And what classes do you love going to teach? And, you know, getting that kind of experience. So that is awesome. Everyone who is viewing, if you have not seen the access yet, there's a grid icon above us, I think somewhere, that has a Q&A drop down. So if you do have questions, pop on over to the Q&A, drop them in there. I'll just check. But we are going to start wrapping up. But there's also, so if you find the Q&A, there's also a showcase yellow price tag with a couple of links there. And the first one should be Jenny's blog. So it's all about kind of her rebranding experience, and it's really lovely. She's done a great job at kind of covering her experience, how it's helped her, all of these things that we've kind of talked about, but in a little bit of other details. And Jenny, where else can they, I mean, Jenny's in the Facebook group, so you can definitely find her in the Facebook group or tag her there, but where else can they find you online? Do you want to just mention your link?
JennyFinkelYoga.com.
Perfect. Easy.
And my Facebook page is Jenny Finkel Yoga, and my Instagram is Jenny Finkel Yoga. I love to follow back. So if you're a yoga teacher and you want to hook up on Instagram, I always follow back.
Awesome.
So come find me. I'm not one of those people who like trolls to get my, and then like I unfollow everybody. I don't do that.
It drives me nuts on Instagram lately. I like people, like 5 people will follow you, and then if you don't follow them by the next day, they like unfollow. It's just weird. It's just weird dynamic. Yeah, it's strange, but
it's like very political in some way.
Yeah. But yes, definitely check out Jenny's links, and she's made it so super easy, which I love as well. When we were doing her brand audit and her website audit, I was so impressed that she has the same handle for everything. So basically, if you just look up Jenny Finkel Yoga, you'll find her. And if you do have questions and you're watching the replay, so you're not here live with us, and you want to tag her in the group, I'm sure she doesn't mind.
Love it.
There's questions that happen over there. And then Suzanne said, I think she's talking in regards to something we were talking about, but she said, this is what we are talking about in a couple of weeks in my discussion group, because it's making people be not totally honest in their business dealings because they are pretending not to be in business. They think it'll make them sell out. So yeah, she's just making a comment, Suzanne, about our talk about kind of the business things. So there is that big, maybe like I would call it a disconnect of selling out versus running a business. But we need to start. This is something that I'm really, really trying to tackle within the yoga community that I have and the teachers that I kind of engage with on an ongoing basis, is this little bit of a disconnect between yoga and business. But that is a big topic for another live chat.
And I would say, just to encapsulate that for Suzanne, what I always say to people who are like, it's not a business, it's not a business. I always say, I don't live on a commune. I don't live like on a beet farm where I teach yoga in exchange for sugar beets, right? I live in downtown Chicago.
It costs money.
It costs money. If you live in a beet farm commune and you want to trade yoga for beets, that's awesome. Maybe you're living the dream, but the rest of us, like,
people need to eat and people need to pay bills. And the bottom line that I try and say all the time is that we have taken trainings, we have educated ourselves, and we have taken ourselves in a direction that gives us knowledge and skills that people don't have. They come to us because they want to learn that, or they need the guidance. So we need to start taking away that shame and that guilt of exchanging money. It's as positive or as negative as you make it. If you make it a very negative thing, then it feels yucky. But if it's like a positive thing, that this is an energy exchange, then that's what it is. So that was so helpful, Jenny. I'm so happy that you came on.
Well, your brand audit was so helpful.
I'm
so
glad.
Helpful. Really, those little things like your visuals really can convey or unconvey your message so strongly. So that learning about that consistency was so enormously helpful. So thank you so much.
I'm glad. You're very welcome. And I'm so happy that you took the time to chat with us today. I think that people will love this, the people who are not here live and the people who are viewing and reviewing. I hope that you found some value and learned from Jenny's experience, because it's something that all of us are probably going to encounter at some time or another, or is something that we should start thinking about now. So thank you so much. And again, jennyfinkelyoga.com, right?
Yes.
And the blog, her blog is up there and it's awesome. So go check her out. And if you have any questions post broadcast, please come over into the Facebook group and let us know. But otherwise, I am going to sign off. So thank you, Jenny.
Thank you so much, Danielle. Thanks, group. Namaste.
See you guys later.
Bye.
Bye.